Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in Northern Michigan. I want to thank all of you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like. Well, I'm back. I'm so sorry that I've been off the air for so long. My ex-wife used the computer. She was going to do her taxes on my computer, and she tried to update it, and it ended up just destroying it. So we had to take it in and try to get it repaired. Supposedly it's fixed, and now it's better than ever. But I mean, what a bummer. I've done this podcast for like 2 years or more, and I've done hundreds of podcasts. And right when the Pistons get in the playoffs, I can't go on the air. And so it was really disappointing. I've had many thoughts and so many things to share. What an exciting time to be a Piston fan. And we make the playoffs. We win those games in the playoffs. We have all those close, exciting games. There was so much to talk about. I don't really know where to jump in, but I think here's where I'm going to start today, and you're just going to have to bear with me, is that we're looking at the offseason now. I know everything's kind of been rehashed about the playoffs, and I can get into that. I could do an episode if anybody wanted me to, but I thought that I'd start here. Is that most of you might have listened to Trajan Langdon's press conference that he did after the season, talking about this year and what's going to happen over the summer and stuff. And I just want to let everybody know that's the most important thing, to listen closely and watch what they say, and then also watch what they do. And it tells you a lot. And so everybody, I know in Piston podcasts and Piston fans like to discuss and try to think of what they should do and what they shouldn't do and all these things. And everybody has their own ideas about it. But it doesn't matter. What's really going to happen comes down to what Trajan wants to do. So we can say, oh yeah, we should trade for a star, or we shouldn't trade for a star, or we should try to move up in the draft or not, but what matters is Trajan. And I think he's smart, he's wise, he has a lot of good things to say. We're going to try to go through his press conference, even though I know that's been rehashed, but I still think that's the most important thing. Just like watching how much players play in games tells you a lot about what the coaches think. We can think, this is what we would like. We think this player should play more than the other. But I mean, like JB, for example, he was so consistent. He never really changed his starting lineup unless there was an injury. That's the only time. And he very rarely changed his rotations unless there was an injury. And it didn't matter if somebody played better and somebody didn't. And there's a lot to that. And Trajan even talked about the continuity, but he was just talking about it in respect to the total program and to our total team and everything about our team. That, like when he was at San Antonio, they were very consistent, and he talked about that for our team. So anyway, he just started out saying it was a hell of a season, surprising, gratifying, everything. Now we have different expectations. So this is going to be hard for us, man. We come in here and our expectations got blown out of the water. And, it was cool. He talked about how they interviewed the players and how many of the players, and I know Malik Beasley said this was the best season. He's been in the league 9 years, but obviously all of our young guys, Jaden, Stu, and those guys that have been around, I'm sure they would have thought this was the best year. I mean, when you win 14 games and then when you win 44 games, when you make the playoffs and you get these games, it's really exciting for them. And again, they just really were together as a team. They supported each other. They had fun together. And he said that they talked about how much fun they had working together. And that was, that mattered. I think that was the reason why they were so successful. They had fun. You could see them. I always loved the shots where they were in the tunnel and they were dancing, and they had Holland. They picked out Holland to be the leader. Holland brought the music, and you'd see these guys come in one at a time dancing through, and it's CK dance, but it's just cool to see how much the guys, and you could see how much they cared about each other and how much they cheered for each other. And it's not like that with every team, but big thing I want to talk about this, and there's a cautionary tale here. We had this amazing season. Everything was up on the rise. The reality is, like I said, Trajan said, there's different expectations. now the expectations are so high. They went, we really only had one direction to go. Now we have another direction that we could go, and it's just reality. You look at some teams that had all these injuries. Wagner and Banchero, they were out for a long time. The New Orleans Pelicans were decimated by injuries, so they hardly had their team, and so they ended up having a bad year, and they didn't even really learn to know what to do about their pieces and how to go forward. I don't think. There's just lots of teams that had lots of injuries, and you see even in these playoffs how many injuries have impacted the playoffs. And so, yeah, but Trajan dedicated our performance staff to how healthy we were and injury free we were. And I knew he made that a priority when he first came in. So that's another thing to watch for next year. How many injuries? Obviously, we lost Ivey with a broken leg, and he was out for all those months, and that was very unfortunate. But yeah, it was. He said there was these guys all buying into the coaches and the coaching, and so they really bought into it from day one. Defense was certainly a big factor. Um, Before the season, people said, "Oh, JB's a defensive coach. Everywhere he's gone, he's always made the defense good," and he is a great defensive coach, obviously. But they were saying our ceiling is so low at the defensive end because we don't have good individual defenders. Everybody on our team, except Asar and Stu, probably are average to below average defenders. And so, how can you have a top? I think we were finished 11th in the year in defense, and from January on, we were even better than that. And so, but it was the the way that Trajan, not Trajan, the way JB went about it, and the staff every day, how intentional they were. I mean, that's not an accident that Duran was in this league. This is his third year, and then all of a sudden his defense goes from mediocre at best to pretty good. And so, yeah, that it's a lot of buying in to the team, and the defense was really a great thing for our team, and um, it's a good thing going forward. That's what we're going to hang our hat on going forward. So I really am excited about that. But they cheered for each other. He said, here's a key thing. Here's what he said. So I've always said that patience is what we're going to do. We're going to be patient, and we're not going to go for the big change and stuff. So that's not going to change. He said, we're going to be patient. And so he said, you just got to listen to what he says. And he said, they're going to explore, and this is the truth, and they're going to explore every avenue. We all think that, we should sign a free agent, we should make a trade, we should do this. But the best thing that he said, and if you go back to my podcast from when I first started, I don't know if it's 3 years ago, he Trajan said it takes two to tango. Well, that's what I've always said. We can want to do this, or we can want to do that. We can want to sign a guy. We can want to fill this position, but there's not always somebody there to do it. But he's not going to hesitate if the right offer comes along at the right time, and there's a team that has something that we want, and we have something they want. He's going to make the move. So could he sign a free agent? Yes, he could. He could move some money around. I mean, right now we have 27 million, but we have 27 million in cap space if we renounce Beasley, Shooter, and Hardaway. And we're not going to do all three of those guys, but we could do two of them. And the other thing is we can still have the cap space. And I'm going to talk about this later. I'm going to have another episode about about the veterans and stuff. But um, we know we can't just keep everybody, and we're going to have negative cap space if we try to resign everybody. But he mentioned that. So they asked him point blank about the veterans, about, are we going to just try to resign all the veterans? He said, yeah, well, they have to want to do it. So they have to want to do it for the amount of money we can afford or want to give them. And that's not necessarily, even if they liked it here, even if they had a great time here, they can't necessarily do it if they can get a better offer somewhere else. Maybe someone really wants them, and someone's going to overpay them or pay them more than what we want to. I mean, it all has to fit together. And so we just gotta listen. And so he said, we're gonna take every call, we're gonna listen to take every avenue, we're gonna try to get better, we're gonna do whatever options are gonna make us, and this is another point, that are gonna make us sustainable for the future success. So he's not going to just make this, and I can just throw out the same, I'm going to talk about it probably later again, but Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant makes us better for for a year or two. He would make us better if we got him, but that's not, if we have to give up a bunch of assets, that's not going to make us for the sustainable future. And so we'll have to see about that. I know it's really interesting about Giannis. Giannis is gonna the way the East is right now. Here's another thing that happened. You look at the draft that just took place, the lottery that just took place. And it ticks me off. The Spurs got the number 2 pick, and I'm not so mad. I got friends in Texas that I was happy for them that they got the number 1 pick, even though they don't deserve it because they traded away Nico. But their fans didn't trade away Luka. It was Nico that traded it away. Their general manager traded away Luka. So I was glad that they got a high pick. I hate the Spurs though now, but the Spurs, they got the number 2 pick. They got so much ammunition to get Giannis. So that might get Giannis out of the East. Cooper Flagg, the best player, he could be a generational player. He's going to be in Dallas in the West. So all the East is really wide open. And you look at Tatum got hurt, and we know we can beat the Knicks. A couple things here and there could have happened real easily. We could have been going on and knocked them off. And so there's just lots of things, but the East is going to be more open than ever. And we got a good team. I mean, I guess we don't have the assets to really get Giannis. We don't, but I just think that even if we gave up some of our young players and got Giannis, and with Cade and whatever else we would have left to put around him, I don't know if that wouldn't put us up with a real shot at winning the East. So, but again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, because I don't think that's going to happen. I think that it's going to come down to, and I'm going to do a podcast on this, that either Spurs or Rockets or OKC are going to get Giannis. That's what I think is going to happen. But we'll talk about that later. But I just love what happened with our team this season. It's such a bummer that like I said, that I couldn't do podcasts right when they finally made the playoffs. They finally won a playoff game, not a home one, but yeah, it's just crazy that we had this amazing leap. But I always thought our players were really good. They're still our big improvement. And Trajan said this: the older players aren't going to necessarily get better. I mean, I would project that Beasley is going to have not as good a year next year as he did this year. I mean, it's really almost impossible he had one of the greatest 3-point shooting when you consider volume and percentage in NBA history. And so odds are he's going to take a step back. But when you got young players, they usually ascend. And so, I still look for Kay to get better. So many things he needs to do, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. He needs to get arc on his shot. If you follow my podcast, that's the number one thing. He shot the 3 terribly. But here's another thing people that I don't think they didn't point out. I've listened to a lot of podcasts and Piston podcasts, is that he shot the 3 bad the last month of the season. He lost his confidence and was shooting it bad, but it's really a factor when you shoot a flat shot. Your chances, your percentages are going to be down, and then it leads to being not confident. But Cade has a good shot. He has good form, except he just needs to elevate his follow through, and then the shot will elevate, and then he will be more consistent. But anyway, so developmenting of young players. So he talked about how Asar did not have an off season last year. He did not have an off season, and now this year he's going to. And so we look for him, and he is certainly, Trajan talked about it. He's got a chance to be unreal, and right now his floor is really high. His ceiling is really high. Is he probably going to end up somewhere, I hope, closer to the top than the floor? But regardless, he is a sensational talent and got so many things that he brings to a team. And you look, especially those last 2 games that he played against the Knicks were phenomenal, and it certainly gives him good confidence and fuel going forward. And I'm excited about that. And Duran, he talked about Duran, how much Duran improved. And again, he referenced the coaching staff and they're developing him as a defender, but his passing, people, I know they don't, a lot of people didn't like Duran. Still people, I'm surprised at the end of the season, there were people that are questioning Duran and keeping Duran or not keeping Duran. And so I mean, where are you going to get a center? He's 21. And you tell me he's not going to continue to develop. He's 21. He's going to be younger than half the players that get drafted in the draft this June. And so he's taken just this monumental leap in passing and defense in the last year. And obviously he's rebounds the crap out of the ball and he's a lob threat. So, but he's going to improve. He's got talent. So some guys are limited by their physical abilities, their coordination, their just ability to do things. And he's shown that he's not, even not last season, he showed some more of his where he had showed off some really cool footwork on a bunch of moves. Not as much as he did, not so much this year. But anyway, uh, he said they're gonna look at free agency and trades and our chances. He said Trajan said our best of getting a player in a really good player would be in a trade. And he laughed. He said, "Don't say that I said that we're going to trade and get a real good player." He laughed, and because he said, that's probably not going to happen. We're probably going to, run the course, and but I still think like all of you that I really think that we need either and it's not rocket science. Everybody knows we need a backup four or a starting four if one could fall into our lap. And there's guys out there. It's not inconceivable. I know everybody says now nothing's off the board because of what happened with Luka getting traded. So anything could happen. But there's guys out there. Najee Marshall's a free agent. We'll talk about that later. And Sali Adama, he's going to be, I think, a restricted free agent. And again, like every year, contracting and the salary cap and what apron your team's on is going to have a big impact on what you end up deciding to do. And there's teams like the Rockets. The Rockets got some guys that, Tari Eason or Jabari Smith Jr., and I'm going to talk about them in another podcast. But they got all these young guys, and they can't play them or pay them all. Reed Shepard hardly played. He was the number 30 pick, and he got to play one game because they were short players, or they were resting players at the end of the year. He had 27 and a bunch of assists and steals. And Jabari Smith is 6'11", and Tari Eason's just a freak on the boards, and his 3-point shooting has improved. So I mean, those are just I'm just throwing out there that there's guys, and if one could happen to land on the Pistons, that would be great to either start Tobias or have the Tobias come off the bench, or depending on who we got, or have the other guy come off because we don't have a backup for. So anyway, he's going to look at all that, but there's just no guarantees. And if he errs on one side or the other, he's made it obvious he's going to err on the side of patience. And again, like I said, I'm going to repeat this over and over again. You can't make a deal unless there's a deal to be made, unless the other team wants to make a deal, and but we're not going to mortgage our future and take a big gamble to just have some immediate success. And you can look at the cautionary tale. You look what's happened. I think most experts like 2 or 3 years ago thought the Grizzlies, they really had it going. I mean, they've been really good, and they got hit by some terrible injuries. And then, Ja gets suspended and things. So they looked like a team of the future at one time, and they just had everything in place, and they even had assets and stuff, but they're not doing that great. The Kings had that one year where they lit the beam and they made the playoffs for the first time in 15 years, and everything was positive and exciting, and then they just took a big step back. The year that they did so well, they had no injuries and things just broke right for them. So I mean, we got to watch out for that, so that means also you can't just stand pat if there's a opportunity to do something else. But this summer's going to be big. It's going to be big for Ron Holland. Ron Holland, he said, really didn't have a summer last year. So um, he talked about a bunch of players. He talked about Asar and Holland and Duran and all that. And then somebody asked him, "Well, what do you think about Ivey?" And so then he said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't say everybody, but here's another thing that you have to listen to. How much you can think at different times. People. I mean, earlier this year, get rid of Duran, don't start Duran, trade Duran. Those were the things I heard on different podcasts and in comments from different fans and stuff. And then things flipped on it. But all along, the Pistons told you he started all the time. He played more than Stu even, and he kept on getting better. So they valued that, and they think that he has a chance to be better. And then you can tell they love Ivey, and a lot of fans did not love Ivey. People, before he got hurt, he was playing really well. Us as fans, and I'm a fan, but people tend to have recency bias. They get all excited about somebody, or they get down on somebody really fast based on what they did the last week. And I've seen it with teams and with players, where teams and players, they can have a great week, a great month, a great 2 months, and then all of a sudden things go bad. I mean, Luka, he had a bad the last round, when they played in this second round when they got knocked off. Everybody on all the different podcasts were trashing him and saying how bad he was like. And just before when they won their first round series, everybody was just praising how great he was. So it's funny how that goes. But yeah, they love Ivey. Trajan loves Ivey, and so that kind of gives you a little flavor of that they're going to probably try to pay him and keep him. We're going to have an episode about that, about Duran and Ivey's extension coming up soon. But he said how felt bad, and I felt bad for this, how painful it was for Jaden Ivey to watch. And I've said this since we drafted him. Jaden Ivey has the biggest heart on the team. I mean, it's really hard to define heart and stuff, but he's more emotional, which sometimes hurts him, but he cares deeply. I mean, Stu has this great spirit, and Stu cares, and Stu fights, and Stu is a great guy to have on your team. But Ivey really cares. He talked about how hard Ivey works, how there's nobody on the team that works harder than Ivey, but he had to watch that, all those watch the team play in the playoffs and how competitive he is. He said he's one of the most competitive guys, and how hard he competes. He talked about how his defense improved, and people still might question that, but he said you could see Ivey get up and pressure guys, and that's what they wanted him to do because he has that ability. He's so athletic and fast. They want him to pressure. And he said you could feel it on the court. You could feel those guys that Ivey was getting up into and pressuring on the perimeter. And did he get beat backdoor once in a while? Sure he did, but the effort's there, but he said he's going to impact both ends of the court. Offensively, he can be a great secondary scorer, but he can also be a primary scorer. And I know he's referring to when Cade's off the court, but he thinks what an impact he can have defensively, setting the tone, and offensively also. And then transition, man, we were one of the top transition teams in the league. And can you imagine? So here's the thing, and I'm sure I will talk about this again later, but our season really took a big jump when we starting Asar in January, and that coincided with Ivey getting hurt. Well, I'm here to tell you that I feel strongly that it wasn't because the subtraction of Ivey, it was because of the addition of Asar. Now put Asar out there with Cade and Ivey and Duran, and I would start Tobias based on the roster that we have right now. And watch out. We're going to get loose balls. We're going to get offensive rebounds. We're going to push the ball up the floor, and we're going to be one of the most athletic teams in the league, and teams are going to have a hard time. But here's another thing, though, that's challenging, because during the regular season, transition is way more important than during the playoffs. The playoffs, the game grinds down and you don't get near as many fast breaks. You still need to try to force it, and I still think we will, especially if we have a team that's that athletic. But he said how dynamic he is, and he said he's even better than he thought he would be. He's better at shooting than he thought he was going to be, and I'm going to repeat this. He was the hardest worker, and what that tells him is he's going to keep getting better. He might have some ups and downs, but he said how compassionate he is, how competitive he is, and it's just those things, are intangibles. And again, in that draft, I wanted Shaden Sharp the year that Ivey came out. Then I wanted Benedict Mathurin. Then I wanted Ivey. Then I wanted Keegan Murray. And I was hoping we would get two of them because I thought we would be able to trade Jeremy Grant to Portland for the 7th pick. But Portland wouldn't do that for us. So anyway, in retrospect, Shaden Sharp tore it up at the end of the year. Shaden Sharp was just dominating at the end of the season this year. He was getting 25 a game, and he's a freak of nature. He can get up way higher than Ivey, and but I love Ivey. I don't think he has the passion, and I don't watch him every day like I watch Ivey. I don't listen to every press conference like I listen to Ivey's, but he was tremendous. I wouldn't hate him, but Benedict Mathurin, he came into the playoffs and he had some great games and great streaks and stuff, but he's an idiot. He might be a great player, but he does stuff that, it's very questionable. He got ejected from a game, and he just has done that consistently, stuff like that. And I hope I'm not just blind. I hope that Ron Holland doesn't end up being Benedict Mathurin. I hope that he can still play with the edge and not back down and play tough and not be an idiot. So we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, I think that Ivey is going to be there. They value Ivey. That's my point. Is that I think they want to see what he can do. Who's going to be the secondary scorer. And they did ask somebody in the interview at point blank asked Trajan, who do you think is going to be the second leading scorer next year? And he chuckled and he said, I don't know, but it's going to be fun finding out. And I would, if I were a betting man, I would bet that he knows that it's going to be Ivey probably. But he said that, like again, Ivey gets loose balls. There's all those plays, Ivey and Asar, they get balls. Duran rebounds way out of his spot. And those are extra possessions that mean the world. Yeah, he thinks he's going to get better, and his competitive nature, though, and his professional approach are undeniable. And Trajan said he didn't understand that all when he got here. He said Cade, now does things to drive winning. I heard an interview with Cade. Cade wants to be the greatest player in the world. That's what Cade wants to be. He's driven to do that. And that's, again, the difference. You see guys that improve or don't improve and guys who are driven to practice. And I mean, that's how, people question Luka, why they traded him, his work ethic and his desire. And I will say this, there's all this talk about Cade and Brunson. And Brunson, I don't like him. He is a flopper. But he says the right things at press conferences. I think he really means them. I think he's a sincere guy. I think that he's incredible, that he can make all the tough shots that he makes, especially under pressure. And he's short, he's not fast or explosive, and he's still that good. But he's been a real hard worker. He's able to focus on what he needs to get better at, and he's done that. And so, but he thinks Cade's big difference is Cade drives winning now, that Cade has figured out what it takes, and that he said that's hard to do, hard to, you can be a really good player and put up numbers like Jalen Green for the Rockets. And then when the pressure got on and the lights turned on, they needed him to score. They didn't really have a scorer, which is why I'm really confident that the Rockets are going to make a huge move this summer. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm just all over the place, but The Pistons again can be used as a third team in a trade. There can be three-way trades, and the Pistons have a little more cap space than other teams, so they might be a key player. We might be able to pick up a player we really want in a three-way trade. But he said Cade's going to have a target on his back from the start of the season, and he didn't until like 60 games where a guy's going to come in and say, I can make a name for myself, guarding Cade. But yeah, we have that cap space available next year, and um, but it depends. There's so many different ways it could go depending on who we resign. Like I said, we have a $27 million, but that doesn't include Beasley and those guys. But here's the thing that kind of bothered me. He talked about Cade coming in elite shape. He thinks that's going to be an important thing. And JJ Redick called out Luka for having to be in good shape. My question is, I think it's great. I think there's something to be said for working your butt off and getting in the best shape possible. But when they get into the NBA season and in the playoffs, they're playing like every other day, almost always. And the best way, and as a coach, I found this, the best way to get in shape is to play basketball. I mean, that conditioning is specific to what you're doing. So if he's playing 36 minutes every other night, you're going to get in shape to do that. And there's not anything. What is he going to do on his off days? Run 100 sprints? So I'm a question. Somebody maybe knows more than I do about that, about understanding. And then they asked him about the draft, and we got the 37th pick. But he referenced how the NIL is pulling all these players that are getting all this money to play. So here's an example. There's this guy, JT Toppin, and a lot of the two different draft experts I was listening to, both had him projected around 35. So he could possibly fall to the Pistons at 35. But he withdrew his name because he's making $4 million a year to play in college. And he even had an offer for more than that at another college, he said. But here's the thing is he's making 4 million. That's what the player picked at around the 13th pick in the first round gets, about $4 million. So he can go back to college, be a sure thing, get that money, work on his game, what he needs, whatever he thinks to need to move him up from being like the 35th pick. And at the same time, he's guaranteed all that money. So I think that really hurts our options at the number 37 spot. But we're going to do whatever we can to think, and we're going to consider every option. If they fall in love with a player and he falls, we would consider trading up. I don't think we will trade up into the first round like Troy always tried to do, because for another thing is, we're ready to try to win. It's good to get a young player on your team, but we got so many players that are in the developmental stages. We got Cade's like the oldest guy at 23, and then we got Duran's 21, and Asar's 22, and Ivey's 22 or 23, and they're all, and Ron's 19, and so we got enough of those guys. The thing about Stu is now I consider Stu's at the age where he's a vet. He's been in the league 5 years, and so he's had 5 years, and so he's really a veteran. But anyway, the point is that we don't need a younger guy, and so we do have to pay these guys. So if you get a young guy, they're cheap. That's a good thing. They're good. You can have them on your squad. You can develop them and maybe use them if you have injuries or stuff. But eventually, like all these guys, what's going to happen? We got to make the decision on Ivey and Duran this year to extend or not to extend, or we can wait a year and then they can go to restricted free agency, or we can I'm sorry, I drew a blank there what I was talking about, but we just know that we can't play everybody and we can't pay everybody. And if all of our draft picks pan out, if Asar ends up being as good as I hope he is going to be, he's going to demand a lot of money. Ivey and Duran show that they're eligible to get money, and you just can't pay everybody on your team lots of money. So to not get a first round pick this year is not, I don't think, hurtful at all. But yeah, and yeah, they again, like I said, they asked which vets should come back, and he said, he didn't know, and it's going to depend partway on them, not just him, and just not the team. Um, but anyway, they have a vision of what they want. I feel confident that JB and Trajan have a good vision of what they want, and I think that they're going to have a real exciting off season. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there is at least one not huge move, but good move. And I think that that's going to be fun for us to watch. And even 37th pick, I love the draft, and so but I'm happy we're not in it. I'm happy that we got to convey that pick, and now we got all of our picks back, and so it's yeah, we're just going to do things that are intentional, and we're going to do things, and we got a really good organization. We have a really good culture. We have some really good leaders, and we have some really good players. And so it's fun to be a Piston fan. Thank you. I'm going to be back and be doing more podcasts, but I appreciate everybody. If you can tell a friend that you have a Piston fan, that's a Piston fan. I know it's going to take a while for me to get my viewers back because I've been gone so long a couple times this year, and I apologize for that, but I really appreciate all of you. Be the reason that somebody feels cared for, and go Pistons.